Go live.
We're live. We're
Yay.
live on the Skulls and Knives podcast. Let me start the audio recording. All right.
Yep, we're live. I got a
We're-
notification.
We're live on the Skulls and Knives podcast. And we've been drinking.
Woo woo.
Woot woot. But it looks like we already have a viewer. That's cool.
What's up? What's up?
Okay.
Who are you? Is it Dad?
I don't know.
Sorry for the abomination, Dad.
Abomination. Abominable snowman. That's not the story we're reading today.
No, it is not the story that we're reading today.
No. We are going to read The Monkey's Paw by
Yay.
W.W. Jacobson. Jacobson. I don't
Did I
know.
take the shot yet?
Wait, we have to say.
Oh.
Okay, so Hannah has a shot she's going to take. I'm not taking a shot because I'm also like
Lightweight.
a lightweight and like basically 2 average cups of glasses of wine ahead of her. So
I mean, also not that I'm not a lightweight because I never drink, but I definitely need another drink in me before I start this podcast.
So I wanted to thank everyone for listening to this special bonus pod.
Cheers.
Drink it. Delicious. Shot of Fireball. By the way, we're drinking Fireball Dr. Pepper.
Or just Fireball in a kid's cup. You know. Parenting 101.
Oh, yeah. The children are asleep.
Yes, we are drinking responsibly.
Responsibly.
Responsibly. Yes, that too.
Guys, I want you to like, subscribe, comment, all those good things that we talk about. And
Yes.
share the pod to everyone you know. So, anyways, Hannah, how was your week?
Oh, it was so fantastic.
What happened?
Well, I don't know if you would call it laid off, but I definitely got, I'm not working. I'm getting paid to work.
You got catastrophe pay, right?
Yeah, so Starbucks is awesome. Shout out to Starbucks. Know that this might not be the most ethically work appropriate place, but they hired me a few weeks ago, and I'm really, really, really thankful because it's a great work environment, and everybody's like so fucking awesome, and they love everybody, and I love everybody, so it works, you know? Like Starbucks rocks. But my store had to close this week, like on Monday. And so, yeah, I'm not working, but Starbucks is paying all their employees catastrophe pay. So I get money to not work, which, I mean, it sucks. I wish I could work, but I feel like if I went to work at another store, I would be kind of more of a hindrance than a helper. Are you really? Okay.
I was just being silly.
Just because I'm so new. It's not that I don't know anything, but it's like I know that there are other baristas out there that definitely can do things better than me, and I would like to make it a less stressful environment for my fellow baristas. So, yeah. But I did ask them to call me if somebody called in or can work so that way they could still be up and running and I could work if they needed me. Because obviously, since I'm so new, I'm kind of a last resort. So, but at least I'm getting paid regardless. So thank you, Starbucks. I love you so much. Yeah.
Well,
that was my week.
My week was good, just being a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah, how's that going for you?
It's going pretty good, actually, surprisingly. I'm only sitting up here because I have to turn off the light and stuff, by the way. I'm going to lean back.
Okay, so I can, chill.
In a little bit.
This is, not very, very aesthetically pleasing.
Aesthetically pleasing?
Yeah. It's not. People aren't going to want to watch our double chins talk, you know? Hey there, how's it going? Yeah, I'm sitting up. I got this.
But anyways, so I was good until I found out that Bernie was suspending his campaign.
Oh, Bernie.
I was really upset. And so I found out later that he's not leaving the campaign. He's just not campaigning anymore.
Yeah.
And so he's still trying to like steal delegates away from Biden. Well, steal's a harsh word for what he's doing, but just to show the Democratic Party like what's up, you know? But anyways, I did what I said I was going to do if he dropped out or left the race, which he basically did. And I switched over to the Green Party and did all the proper stuff to update my CPUSA membership as well. So CPUSA is Communist Party of America, but
which I don't associate with at the moment. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, she's still a registered Democrat, but that's okay.
Not that politics matter at all in this podcast, okay?
They do matter.
This is not the time or place to discuss that. We are having a good...
Oh, this specific podcast.
Yes, in this specific podcast. This is a bonus pod, y'all. We're just quarantine storytelling, you know?
Hell yeah. Dan, I saw that you liked the Instagram. I hope you're on the YouTube.
Yeah, Dan.
Anyways.
We love you.
Anyways.
Thanks for supporting the pod. You know, shout out to Dan.
Hell yeah.
And Jason Robinson.
Yeah, and my mom.
And Kim Robinson.
Yeah.
We love you terribly.
Yeah. That $11 a month. It's great.
Hey, it's better than nothing. Okay.
It is.
And
but
you know
that's
we're
why.
Not in this for the money.
No.
You need to be respectful.
No, we're not in this for the money. But I do. If you guys haven't seen by now, we need a better webcam. And so
cheers
my microphone. Cheers.
Dink.
But my I have new microphones coming in. Thank you guys for listening to the pod. I get some money off that ad at the beginning.
Excuse
me. You're excused.
I think I might go get another shot.
All right, go get another shot. Hurry up. We're gonna tell the story.
Okay.
But while she's getting another shot, I'm gonna just tell you guys that I'm waiting on some new microphones to come in, so that when the quarantine's over, we can have some. I'm just gonna take this off. It's fucking hot in here. We can have the in-person interviews be a little better. I'm also trying to figure out some streaming stuff, some streaming software right now. Hopefully by this week's pod, it'll be that figured out. Excuse me. So that the audio and everything sounds better when people call in and whatnot. I'm going to try and do it all through the computer and use a streaming service to do that shit. And then, yeah, I'm just waiting around for a little more money to get a better webcam. But I wanted to say thank you guys. Though. Yeah. So we have 2 mics coming in so that when I do interviews.
It should be here soon.
Yeah,
That's what Amazon says.
It says now April 18th, I think.
April 18th.
But once I have that, we'll have some interesting people on. Which should be very
Hunter's
fun.
Hunter's going to come on. My twin sister's going to come on the podcast sometime soon.
Yeah.
We've got other people lined up. You know, we're getting the works in, you know. All social distancing, though. Hashtag social distancing. Hashtag coronavirus. Hashtag I'm going insane.
Hashtag. Yeah. Stay at home, fuckers.
Yeah.
Stop crowding Walmarts.
Dude, Walmarts are so insane.
I will say when I went
Starbucks are so insane.
Yeah, the lines are crazy.
Starbucks? I'm joking.
Starbucks is?
Starbucks. This is
Starbucks
April
eye.
18th is when the microphones are arriving.
April 18th.
Here you go, ladies and gentlemen. You can see the beautiful work of art that we have coming to us.
Ooh.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, bitch.
We are so cool.
All right, we're already 10 minutes into this.
Yeah,
we need
we
to
gotta
start
get this
the
shit
story.
rolling.
So I'm gonna switch over to this story, and then wait. I want to make sure the lights work real quick.
Yeah. By the way, we have never read this story before. So this is our
my God,
drunk
it's really dark.
improvising. There you go.
Hello, we're gonna read a scary story. And then, so I'm just gonna, when I hand the mic to you, I'll put the light under your face, okay?
Yeah, and then I'll talk.
I'll be in charge of the light.
You know, we gotta improvise, people. We've never done this before, and we are not sober.
Hello.
I don't think we can end up back here because we have to
Read the story. Yeah, it's true.
Oh, did I take this? Okay, guys, I'm taking my other shot.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. I want to make sure that this is okay. I think that's. I should have tested this out before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we probably should have when we were sober.
When we were sober and thinking about this podcast.
Yeah.
I want to just make sure the audio is picking up decently.
The light wasn't gonna
No,
work.
it's not.
The audio is pretty good.
No, it's too low. How about you? We'll hand off to you. Hold the light for me. It can't be directly. It's gotta be underneath. There you go. Nice and creepy. Okay.
This is not gonna be a very good
No.
idea.
How about we just say fuck it? What do you say about fuck it to
We
this
can
flashlight?
do it. Here. Just stay where you need to be. Okay.
Well, we're gonna move throughout the pod. Fuck it. Fuck it. Come on. We'll just do low lighting. We'll do low lighting.
Okay. Low lighting.
Just one light.
I can't remember how to turn this flashlight off. How's it going, people? The Skulls and Knives pod.
Oops, I unplugged the light.
I'm way too drunk for this podcast, but we're doing it.
There we go. Low lighting.
Low lighting. This is the lighting that we strive for.
The lighting of the low. All right.
Caleb is going to start.
I'm going to start. Okay. All right. This is the Monkey's Paw.
Bye.
By W.W. Jacob or Jacobs? Probably Jacobs. Anyways, just so you guys know, this is a not open source. What is it?
Non-copyrighted?
Yeah, whatever. It's a free story. So
we can read this shit, okay?
If you want to read along, you can.
Yeah, at whatever website that is up there on the browser.
Just look up the story. It'll show up.
Yeah,
the Monkey's Paw. It's
sure.
It's pretty famous.
Nobody needs to read along because we're going to do perfect.
Perfect. All right. Let me wet my whistle here.
I think you'd mean coat. Oh, I have to be sound effects.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So Hannah's going to be sound effects in the background.
I'm not promising anything here, okay?
And
I'm just trying.
And I'm going to be sound effects behind Hannah.
Okay.
Without, the night was cold and wet, but in the small parlor of Laburnum Villa, the blinds were drawn and the fire burned brightly. Father and son were at chess. The former, who possessed ideas about the game involving radical changes, putting his king into such a sharp, sharp and unnecessary perils that it even provoked comment from the white-haired old lady knitting placidly by the fire. Hark at the wind, said Mr. White, who, having seen a fatal mistake after it was too late, was amiably disastrous of preventing his son from seeing it. "I'm listening," said the latter, grimly surveying the board as he stretched out his hand. "Check." "I should hardly think that he'd come tonight," said his father, with his hand poised over the board. "Mate," replied the son. That's the worst. That's the worst of living far out," bawled Mr. White, with sudden and unlooked for violence. "Of all the beastly, slushy, out of the way places to live in, this is the worst. Pathways bog and the roads a torrent. I don't know what people are thinking about. I suppose because only 2 houses on the road are let, they think it doesn't matter." "Never mind, dear," said his wife soothingly. "Perhaps you will win the next one."
Mr. White looked up sharply. I'm so drunk.
Keep reading.
Just in time to intercept a knowing glance between mother and son. The words died away on his lips, and he hid a guilty grin as thin as gray beard. "There he is," said Herbert White, as the gate banged so loudly and heavily. Heavy steps came toward the door. The old man rose with hospitable haste, and opening the door was heard canoodling, right? Canoodling?
Condoling.
Whoops. Condoling with the new arrival. I've had a lot of shots, okay,
Just
people?
read it.
The arrival also condoled with himself, so that Mrs. White said, "Tut, tut," and coughed gently as her husband entered the room, followed by a tall, burly man, beady of eye and rubicund of visage.
Whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah, I don't know what that means either. "Sergeant Mayor Morris," he said.
Major.
"Yeah, Sergeant Major Morris," he said, introducing him. The sergeant major shook hands and, taking the preferred seat by the fire, watched. I'm so drunk, guys. Watched contentedly while his host got out whiskey and tumblers and stood a small copper kettle on the fire. At the third glass, his eyes got brighter. He began to talk with the little family circle regarding with eager interest as this visitor from the distant parts. I'm doing terrible.
It's fine.
As he squared his broad shoulders in the chair and spoke of strange scenes and doughty deeds, of wars and plagues and strange peoples.
21 years of it, said Mr. White, nodding to his wife and son. When he went away, he was slip of a youth in the warehouse. Now look at him. He don't look to have taken much harm, said Mrs. White politely. I'd like to go to India myself, said the old man, just to look around a bit, you know. Better where you are, said the sergeant major, shaking his head. He put down the empty glass and sighing softly, shook it again. I should like to see those old temples and fockeries and jugglers, said the old man. What was that you started telling me the other day about a monkey's paw or something, Morris?
What is that? You're changing inflection with every line.
I'm trying.
Okay.
Not to be changing, but to be normal. Nothing, the soldier said the soldier hastily. Leastways, nothing worth hearing. A monkey's paw, said Mrs. White curiously. Well, it's just a bit of what you might call magic, perhaps, said the sergeant major offhandedly. His three listeners leaned forward eagerly, as same as we do, trying to read the words that slowly become more blurred as we go along with the story. The visitor absent-mindedly put his empty glass to his lips and then set it down again. His host filled it up for him.
To look at, said the sergeant major, fumbling in his pocket. It's just an ordinary little paw, dried to a mummy. He took something out of his pocket and proffered it. Mrs. White drew back with a grimace, but her son, taking it, examined it curiously. And what is there special about it? Inquired Mr. White, as he took it from his son and, having examined it, placed it upon the table. It had a spell put on it by an old fakir, said the sergeant major, a very holy man. He wanted to show that fate ruled people's lives and that those interfered with it did so to their sorrow.
Be careful with the cord.
Sorry.
Okay. You just hit it.
He put a spell on it so that 3 separate men could each have 3 wishes from it. His manner was so impressive that his hearers were conscious that their light laughter jarred somewhat. I'm so drunk. Well, why don't you have 3, sir? Herbert White said cleverly. The soldier regarded him in the way that middle age is wont regard to presumptuous youth. I swear that's what it says. The soldier regarded him in the way that middle age is wont regard to presumptuous youth. That is not me. That is the actual text. Okay, people. I have, he said quietly. His blotchy face whitened. And did you really have 3 wishes granted? Asked Mrs. White. I did, said the sergeant major, and his glass tapped against his strong teeth. I had to.
You want to keep going?
No, you can start now.
Has anybody else wished? Inquired the old lady. The first man had his 3 wishes, yes, was the reply. I don't know what the first 2 were, but the third was for death. That's how I got the paw. His tones were so grave that a hush fell upon the room. I think it's supposed to be silent. That's what a hush means. It's
I'm
not
really
actually
drunk,
hushing
okay?
people. If you've had your 3 wishes, it's no good for you now then, Morris, said the old man at last. What do you keep it for? The soldier shook his head. Fancy, I suppose, he said slowly. If you could have another 3 wishes, said the old man, eyeing him keenly, would you have them? I don't know, said the other. I don't know. He took the paw and, dangling it between his front finger and thumb, suddenly threw it upon the fire. White, with a slight cry, stooped down and snatched it off. Better let it burn, the soldier said solemnly. If you don't want it, Morris, said the old man, give it to me. I won't, said his friend doggedly. I threw it on the fire. If you keep it, don't blame me for what happens. Pitch it in the fire again. Be a sensible man. The other shook his head and examined his new possession closely. How do you do it? He inquired. Hold it up in your right hand and wish aloud, said the sergeant major. But I warn you, of the consequences.
Sounds like the Arabian Nights, said Mrs. White, as she rose and began to set the supper. Don't you think you might wish for 4 pairs of hands for me? Her husband drew the talisman from his pocket, and then all 3 burst into laughter as the sergeant major, with a look of alarm on his face.
It's a talisman.
Whatever. What do you mean that? Oh, what did I say?
A talesman.
It's not my fault, okay? I have fireball in me. Okay.
Right, you gotta start reading this. We're
Okay.
barely into it.
Her husband drew the talisman, right?
Yes.
From his pocket, and then all 3 burst into laughter as the sergeant major, with look of alarm on his face, caught him by the arm. If you must wish, he said gruffly, wish for something sensible!
We have children asleep in the other room here.
I'm doing it for the pod, okay?
Okay.
Mr. White dropped back into his pocket and, placing chairs, motioned his friend to the table. In the business of supper, the talisman was partly forgotten. Yeah, definitely forgotten. We forgot all about the talisman. And afterward, the 3 sat listening in an enthralled fashion of a second installment of the soldier's adventures in India. If the tale about the monkey paw is not more truthful than those he has been telling us, said Herbert, as the door closed behind their guest, and just in time for him to catch the last train. We shan't make it so much out of it. Did you give him anything for it, father? Inquired Miss White, regarding her husband closely. A trifle, he said he, coloring slightly. He didn't want it, but I made him take it, and he pressed me again to throw it away. Likely, said Herbert with pretended horror. Why, we're going to be rich and famous and happy. Wish to be an emperor, father, to begin with. Then you can't be henpecked. There you go. That was the performance of a lifetime.
Performance of a lifetime. Shit, dog.
I'm really drunk.
Mr. White took the. Oh, wait. He darted around the table, pursued by the maligned Miss White, armed with an antimacassar. Macassar?
Antimacassar?
Macassar?
Something.
Macassar. Anyways, it's probably a kitchen utensil. Mr. White took the paw from his pocket and eyed it dubiously. I don't know what to wish for, and that's a fact, he said slowly. It seems to me I've got all I want.
If only you cleared the house.
Hold on. Who the fuck is Herbert?
I don't really know. I don't understand any of the story.
I am getting lost in the characters too. Whatever. If you cleared the house, you'd be quite happy, wouldn't you? Said Herbert with his hand on his shoulder. Well, wish for 200 pounds then. That'll just do it. His father smiled. Oh, it was his son. Herbert's the son. His father, smiling. I was glad I picked the son's voice to do that. His father, smiling shamefacedly at his own credulity, held up the talisman as his son, with a solemn face, somewhat marred by a wink at his mother, sat down at the piano and struck a few impressive chords. Oh, what? You're doing the chords, the piano.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Those are impressive chords. I wish for 200 pounds, said the old man distinctly.
Me too.
A fine crash from the piano greeted the words, interrupted by a shuddering cry from the. Oh, whoa. You got Dr. Pepper all over the place.
It was a crash from the piano.
Oh. Whoosh would have sufficed. Interrupted by a shuddering cry from the old man, his wife and son ran toward him. It moved, he cried. What are you doing? I have to read the story.
I know, but I wanted to see if there's anybody watching.
There's like one person watching.
Yeah.
Thank you for the one person watching live. Majority of the people who watch this or listen to it watch it afterwards or listen to it afterwards.
Sorry that I'm so drunk, guys.
It's okay. We forgive you.
I love it.
All right. Do you want me to just tell the story then?
No, I want to continue.
Okay.
I want to.
All right. There was a crash at the piano.
I just get really bored when you're doing it.
Interrupted by a shuddering cry from the old man. His wife and son ran towards him. It moved, he cried with a glance of disgust at the object as it lay on the floor. As I wished it twisted in my hands like a snake. Well, I don't see the money, said his son, as he picked it up and placed it on the table, and I bet I never shall. It must have been your fancy, father, said his wife, regarding him anxiously. He shook his head. Never mind, though. There's no harm done, but it gave me a shock all the same. They sat down by the fire again while the two men finished their pipes. Outside, the wind was higher than ever, and the old man started nervously at the sound of a door banging upstairs. A silence unusual and depressing settled upon all three, which lasted until the old couple rose to retire for the night.
I expect you'll find the cash tied up in a big bag in the middle of your bed, said Herbert, as he bade them good night. And something horrible squatting up on top of the wardrobe watching you as you pocket your ill-gotten gains. He sat alone in the darkness, gazing at the fire and seeing faces in it. The last face was so horrible and so simian that he gazed at it as amazement. It got so vivid that with an uneasy laugh.
Be careful of the cord.
Sorry.
I'm gonna have to buy 3 fucking mics.
Oh god, I'm so drunk.
You lost the screen.
Caleb.
We aren't even to part 2 yet, Hannah. We're barely into this thing.
Oh my
god. How many minutes have we been at? We're 30 minutes in and we're not even at part 2.
Oh my god.
Alright, I'm just gonna keep reading until she's done.
I'm gonna keep reading.
Okay, you can start reading in 2 paragraphs. He sat alone in the darkness, gazing at the fire and seeing faces in it. The last face was so horrible and simian that he gazed
I already read this part.
at it in amazement. It got so vivid that a little uneasy laugh he felt on the table, a glass containing a little water to throw over it.
Yeah,
his hand grasped the monkey's paw, and with a little shiver, he wiped his hand on his coat and went up to bed.
Do you even know what's happening in the story?
Yeah, they like wished upon the monkey paw.
Okay, let me try. In the brightness of wintry sun, the next morning, as it streamed over the breakfast table, Herbert laughed at his fears. There was an air of prosaic wholesomeness about the room which it had lacked on the previous night, and the dirty, shriveled little paw was pitched on the sideboard with carelessness which betokened no great belief in its virtues. I suppose all old soldiers are the same, said Mrs. White. The idea of our listening to such nonsense! How could wishes be granted in these days? And if they could, how could 200 pounds hurt you further? Father, sorry, not further. Might drop his head up from the sky, said the frivolous Herbert. You can do it now.
Morris said things happen so naturally, said his father, but you might, if you so wish, to attribute it to coincidence.
We're not even at part 2 yet.
No, we're in part 2 now.
Oh, thank God.
Well, don't break in the money before I come back, said Herbert, as he rose from the table. I'm afraid you'll turn into a mean, avaricious man, and will have to disown you. His mother laughed. And followed him to the door, watched him down the road, and returning to the breakfast table, he was very happy at the expense of her husband's credulity, all of which did not prevent her from scurrying to the door at the postman's knock, nor prevent her from referring somewhat shortly to retired sergeant majors of bibulous habits when she found that the post brought a tailor's bill. Herbert will have some more time for his funny remarks, I expect, when he comes home, she said as they sat at dinner. I dare say, said Mr. White, pouring himself some beer. Okay. But for all that, the thing moved in my hand, and I'll swear to it. You thought it did, said the old lady soothingly. I say it did, replied the other. There was no thought about it. I had just what's the matter? His wife made no reply. She was watching the mysterious movements of a man outside, who, peering in an undeceited fashion at the house, appeared to be trying to make up his mind to enter. In mental connection with the 200 pounds, she noticed that the stranger was well dressed and wore a silk hat of glossy newness. 3 times he paused at the gate and then walked on again. The 4th time he stood with his hand upon it, and then with a sudden resolution flung it open and walked up the path. Miss White at the same moment placed her hands behind her, and hurriedly fastening the strings of her apron, put that useful article of apparel beneath the cushion of her chair.
She brought the stranger, who seemed ill at ease, into the room. He gazed at her fruitfully and listened in a preoccupied fashion as the old lady apologized for the appearance of the room. I'm so sorry, it's so terrible. And her husband's coat, a garment in which he usually reserved for the garden. She then waited as patiently as her sex would permit for him to broach his business, but he was at first strangely silent.
Can we real quick just acknowledge the amount of sexism in this story?
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. It's in every story.
I know, but it's
Okay,
like I know this
women
is
are
probably
fucking world.
I know this is probably pretty old, but I just feel like something like, quote, she then waited as patiently as her sex would permit would usually not be okay.
Like, yeah, that's what you think, but really, that's what's happening.
Yeah. That's all right. Anyways. It's an old story. Keep that in mind as we read.
I was asked to call and said at last, and stooped and picked a piece of cotton from his trousers. I come from Ma and Megan's. My bad.
It's fine. Keep going.
The old lady started. Is anything the matter? She asked breathlessly. Has anything happened to Herbert? What is it? Her husband interposed. There, mother, he said hastily. Sit down and don't jump to conclusions. You've not brought bad news, I'm sure, sir. And he eyed the other wistfully. I'm sorry, began the visitor. Is he hurt? Demanded the mother. The visitor bowed in assent. Badly hurt, he said quietly. but he is not in any pain. Oh, thank God! The woman said, clasping her hands. Thank God for that! Thank! She broke off suddenly as the sinister meaning of the assurance dawned upon her that she saw the awful confirmation of her fears in the other's averted face. She caught her breath. I was doing so well. And turning to her slower-witted husband, laid her trembling old hand upon his. There was a long silence. He was caught in the machinery, said the visitor at length, in a low voice. Caught in the machinery, repeated Mr. White, in a dazed fashion. Yes. Here you go.
He sat staring blankly out the window and taking his wife's hand between his own, pressed it as he had been wont to do in their old courting days nearly 40 years before.
This over?
We're more than halfway through.
I hope so.
He was the only one left of us, he said, turning gently to the visitor. It is hard. The other coughed and, rising, walked slowly to the window. The firm wished me to convey their sincere sympathy with you in your great loss, he said, without looking around. I beg that you will understand I am only their servant and merely obeying orders. There was no reply. The old woman's face was white, her eyes staring, and her breath inaudible. On the husband's face was a look of such as his friend the sergeant might have carried into his first action. I was to say that the A.M.A.R.I.C.A.N disclaimed all responsibility, continued the other. They admit no liability at all, but in consideration of your son's services, they wish to present you with a certain sum of compensation. Mr. White dropped his wife's hand, and rising to his feet, gazed with a look of horror at his visitor. His dry lips shaped the words, How much? £200, was the answer. Unconscious of his wife's shriek, the old man smiled faintly, put out his hands like a sightless man, and dropped a senseless heap to the floor. Okay, so, real quick. I know I've been giving these two people multiple characters. Mr. White and Mrs. White are the same person. Or, sorry, Mr. White and Mrs. White are the same as the old man and the old lady.
I have hiccups.
The son is Herbert. Yeah, she does.
Hold on, I'm gonna go take care.
And the old major friend is the one who brought the paw. You okay?
I just needed to get rid of my hiccups.
You didn't get rid of them. They're still there. Do you want me to keep reading?
Yeah.
Can you get me more Dr. Pepper Fireball?
Yeah.
Thanks. You okay?
I can do that for you.
Okay. I wish you guys could see this right now. She's falling all over the place.
Oh my God, this is the short ever. My whole life.
Come on, just don't worry about getting me a new drink. Oh my God, she's slipping everywhere. Hannah, just get some water for yourself. Get water for yourself. I'm gonna drink yours. Anyway, she's going tinkle. In the huge new cemetery, some 2 miles. Oh, so this is part 3, everyone. In the huge new cemetery, some 2 miles distant, the old people buried their dead and came back to a house steeped in shadow and silence. It was all over so quickly that at first they could hardly realize it, and remained in a state of expectation as though of something else to happen. Something else which was to lighten this load, too heavy for old hearts to bear. But the days passed, and expectation gave place to resignation, the hopeless resignation of the old, sometimes miscalled apathy. Sometimes they hardly exchanged a word, for now they had nothing to talk about, and their days were long to weariness. It was about a week after that the old man, walking suddenly in the night, stretched out his hand and found himself alone. The room was in darkness, and the sound subdued weeping came from the window. He raised himself in bed and listened. "Come back," he said tenderly. "You will be cold." "It's cold. It is colder for my son," said the old woman, and wept afresh. The sound of her sobs died away on his ears. The bed was warm, and his eyes heavy with sleep. He dozed fitfully, and then slept until a sudden wild cry from his wife awoke him with a start. "The paw!" she cried wildly. "The monkey's paw!" He startled up in alarm. Where is it? What's the matter?" She came stumbling across the room toward him. "I want it," she said quietly. "You've not destroyed it?" "It's in the parlor on the bracket," he replied, marveling. "Why?" She cried and laughed altogether. Bending over, kissed his cheek. "I only just thought of it," she said hysterically. "Why didn't I think of it before? Why didn't you think of it?" "Think of what?" he questioned. "The other two wishes," she replied rapidly. "We've only had one." "Was that not enough?" the man demanded fiercely. "No," she cried triumphantly. Oh my Jesus Lord.
There's your mom.
Thank you. It's everywhere. "We've only had one." "Was that not enough?" he demanded fiercely. "No," she cried triumphantly. "We'll have one more. Go down, get it quickly, and wish our boy back alive again." The man sat up in bed and flung the bedclothes from his quaking limbs. "Good God, you're mad!" he cried in angst. "Get it," she panted. "Get it quickly and wish. Oh, my boy, my boy." Her husband struck a match and lit the candle. "Get back to bed," he said unsteadily. "You don't know what you're saying." "We had the first wish granted," said the old woman feverishly. "Why not the second?" "A coincidence," stammered the old man. Go and get it and wish," cried the old woman, quivering with excitement. The old man turned and regarded her. His voice shook. "He has been dead 10 days, and besides, I would not tell you else, but I could only recognize him by his clothing if he was too terrible for you to see then. How now?" "Bring him back!" cried the old woman, and dragged him toward the door. "Do you think I fear the child I have nursed?" He went down in the darkness and felt his way to the parlor and then to the mantelpiece. The talisman was in its place, and a horrible fear that was unspoken wish might bring his mutilated son before him ere he could escape the room seized upon him, and he caught his breath. He found that he had lost the direction of the door. His brow cold with sweat, he felt his way around the table and groped along the wall until he found himself in a small passage with an unwholesome thing in his hand. His wife's face seemed changed as he entered the room. It was white and expectant, and his fears seemed to have an unnatural look upon it. He was afraid of her. "Wish," she cried in a strong voice. "It was foolish and wicked," he faltered. "Wish," she repeated. He raised his hand. "I wish my son alive again." The talisman fell to the floor, and he regarded it fearfully. Then he sank, trembling, into the chair as the old woman with burning eyes walked to the window and raised the blind. He sat until he was chilled, with the cold glancing occasionally at the figure of the old woman peering through the window. The candle end, which had burnt below the rim of the china candlestick and throwing pulsating shadows on the ceiling and walls until with a flicker larger than the rest it expired. The old man, with an unspeakable sense of relief at the failure of the talisman, crept back into his bed. In a minute or two, oh God, it went away. In a minute or two afterward, the old woman came silently and apathetically beside him. Neither spoke, but both lay silently listening to the ticking of the clock. A stair creaked, and a squeaky mouse scurried noisily through the hall. The darkness was oppressive, and after lying for some time, screwing up his courage, the husband took the box of matches and, striking one, went downstairs for a candle. At the foot of the stairs, the match went out, and he paused to strike another. At the same moment, a knock, so quiet and stealthy as to be scarcely audible, sounded to the front door. The matches fell from his hand. He stood motionless, his breath suspended until the knock was repeated. When he turned and fled swiftly back to his room and closed the door behind him, a third knock sounded through the house. "What's that?" cried the old woman, starting up. "A rat," said the old man in shaking tones. "A rat. It passed me in the stairs." His wife sat up in bed listening. A loud knock resounded through the house. "It's Herbert!" she screamed. "It's Herbert!" She ran through the door, but her husband was before her and, catching her by the arm, held her tightly. "What are you going to do?" he whispered hoarsely. "It's my boy! It's Herbert!" she cried, struggling mechanically. "I forgot it was 2 miles away. What are you holding me for? Let go! I must open the door." "For God's sake, don't let it in!" cried the old man, trembling. "You're afraid of your own son?" she cried, struggling. "Let me go! I'm coming, Herbert, I'm coming!" There was another knock. There was another knock. And another. The old woman, with a sudden wrench, broke free and ran from the room. Her husband followed to the landing and called after her, appealing as she hurried down the stairs. He heard the chain rattle back. That's what a chain sounds like.
I don't know anymore.
I'm going to show you her when we're done.
You're going to what?
He heard the chain. I'm going to show you them when you're done.
Okay.
He heard the chain rattle back and the bottom bolt drawn slowly and stiffly from the socket. Then the old woman's voice, strained and panting. "The bolt!" she cried loudly. "Come down, I can't reach it." But her husband was on his hands and knees, groping wildly on the floor in search of the paw. If he could only find it before the thing outside got in. A perfect fusillade of knocks reverberated through the house. And he heard the scraping of a chair as his wife put it down in the passage against the door. He heard the creaking of the bolt as it came slowly back. And at the same moment, he found the monkey's paw and frantically breathed his third and last wish. The knocking ceased suddenly. Although the echoes of it were still in the house, he heard the chair drawn back and the door opened. A cold wind rushed up the staircase, and a long, loud wail of disappointment and misery from his wife gave him courage to run down to her side, and then to the gate beyond. The street lamp flickering opposite shone a quiet and deserted road.
The end.
That was the end of The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs.
Sorry that I'm so drunk, people.
You're fine.
But I never drink. So it happens, you know? Caleb has never seen me drunk in my life like this.
Look, it was an hour long.
Woohoo!
There you are.
Yay!
We're on the floor now.
Yeah, we made it to the floor.
only half my water made it in the cup after you spilled it.
I needed this
all
too.
over the table.
I've drank some of it. I needed some replenishment of the beverages.
The beverages. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to the bonus Skulls and Knives reading pod.
Sorry that it was me drunk. But that's what you get during quarantine. Yay!
Yay! Yuppers.
We love you so much.
Yeah, we love you. Keep supporting the pod. Share the pod with everyone. It's been a fun time.
It's been so fun. We're not being sarcastic at all.
Not at all. We love the pod.
No, we definitely love the pod. That's not the sarcastic part.
Oh.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, we're gonna stop the audio. Where's my keyboard is wet. Okay, stop.
Sorry.
Okay, we're gonna end the live. Oh my God, I'm zooming in on the live screen and I can't unzoom out of it. There's water everywhere.
Why is this
What?
so amazing?
I can't. There we.
Oh
No.
God, Caleb, you can do it.
Oh, there's water on the screen. That's why.
What do you mean?
There's water all over the screen. It's touch screen.
There was never any issues before.
Yeah, but now there is because you spilled water all over my computer.
I'm so sorry, people of the Skulls and Knives pod.
Alright, we're gonna end it now. Where is my? Why is my? Nothing is stopping. I really don't know what's going on.
Let me help.
Hold on.
Let me try to help.
No, you do not need help.
Ooh, I'm doing a nice stretch right now.
Okay. Okay. End stream. Bye, guys.
Bye. Love you.